People practicing martial arts in the open air. Some Tai Chi being performed. And what about here? Some outstanding diving to come. And some swimming as well, because this is the first time in the history of the FINA World Cup series that Diving and Swimming World Cup have happened in the same venue at the same time. So plenty for the spectators and for you watching from home to enjoy. For some of the athletes who have been involved already, a chance for them to sit and watch. For young athletes as well, and for members of the public to cheer on their favourites. It's been a wonderful competition, as expected, for the People's Republic of China. The favourites have lived up to the pre-match billing and have performed outstandingly, taking all of the gold medals that they have had the opportunity to win. We have coming up for you the women's 3-metre springboard final, followed by the men's 10-metre platform final, and then the mixed team event will conclude our coverage. It really is going to be a fascinating day of competition, and it is great to have your company wherever in the world you're watching from, whoever you're supporting and however long you've been following the wonderful sport of diving, a sport that brings together athletic and aesthetic excellence, a sport that is balletic and sculptural, a sport that is artistic, and yet is about firm foundations. Kristen Hayden of the United States of America will be the first to go in the women's 3-metre springboard final, having taken a synchronised bronze medal yesterday, her first FINA medal. Daniela Zapata of Colombia, silver medalist at the South American Games earlier this month in Asunción. 20-year-old's been in very good form of late.
Representing Brazil,
Luana Lira of Brazil, the 26-year-old Olympian who has just taken a bronze medal at those aforementioned South American Games in this event. The 9th strongest performer in qualification, Amy Wilson of Canada. 22-year-old won her first FINA medal earlier this year in synchronised competition. Samantha Pickens of the United States of America, the 31-year-old who won the 3-metre springboard event at the US Open Championships this year.
representing Colombia, Viviana Uribe Bermudez.
Viviana Uribe of Colombia, who's just won 3 gold medals at the South American Games, including this title.
Germany, Jana Lisa Rota.
Jana Lisa Rota of Germany, the 24-year-old who is based in the city of Berlin. She won 3-metre synchronised silver with the athlete that you're about to see, Saskia Oettinghaus. 24-year-old based in Dresden, from Rostock originally. Now to the top 4 from qualification. Australia's Brittany O'Brien, the 24-year-old who has just taken a medal at the Commonwealth Games earlier in the summer. She has 4 Grand Prix medals in FINA competition. Mikami Sayaka of Japan, the 3rd strongest in qualification. 21-year-old was a synchronised silver medalist at the World Championships this year with Kaneto Rin. And the top 2, starting with Chen Yuen of the People's Republic of China, the reigning world champion, and she won 3-metre synchronised gold earlier on in this World Cup with the athlete that you're looking at there, Chang Yani. But that's the top performer in qualification, the 20-year-old from Hubei province who was the bronze medalist at the individual event in the World Championships. So those are your 12.
Meine Damen und Herren, begrüßen Sie nun die Offiziellen und Kampfrichter für den folgenden Wettkampf.
Well, it's going to be quite some competition, this. Really interesting. Chang was ahead of Chen by only 8.1 marks in qualification. Are we in for a really close contest? And what a peloton as well to really be trying to join these athletes if everything goes according to plan on the podium. Could be really rather tight, actually. If you look at the qualification marks, they, to a degree, all of them, all of the top contenders left the door open somewhere along the way. There was a wayward dive here and there that, if remedied, could absolutely transform proceedings in the final proper. We'll talk about that as and when the athletes actually come up to the springboard.
Judge number 1, Mr. Anatoly Golovan. Judge number 2, Mr.
Look at the officials.
Judge number 3, Ms. Nora Shekfi. Judge number 4,
They will, as ever, be monitoring the execution of the dive, and will then be multiplied by the degree of difficulty.
And judge number 7, Mr. Florin
Score broken down chiefly into the components of takeoff, flight and entry. I'm sure many of you know that very well, watching this sport for a number of years, but it's always great to have people joining the sport, watching for the first time. And we'll try to cover some of the mechanics of well-executed dives as we watch this final. And they will be watching it. Those are your judges. Proud moment for them as well to officiate in a World Cup competition. So we are just a matter now of seconds away, really, from the start of competition on this final day in Berlin at the Schwimm- und Sprunghalle im Europa Sport Park, the SSE. The women's 3-metre springboard final, the first of 3 finals taking place today. An athlete who's had a really highly successful time of things here in Berlin.
Erster Durchgang, first round. Kristen Hayden, 2,5 vorwärts mit einer Schraube gehechtet. Forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist.
Kristen Hayden of the United States of America, the 24-year-old from New Jersey, graduate last year of the University of Minnesota in communications, now a graduate school student at Indiana University. Forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist in the pike position. She was a little over, wasn't she, coming into the water. This was a dive that she performed securely in qualification. The second dive was the one that posed the greatest problem.
5.5, 6, 5.5, 5.5, 6.5, 6, 6.
It's not a bad pike position. Little leg separation as she goes round into the twist. Heels come apart. But quite comparable to qualification, 52.5. Daniela Zapata of Colombia opens with the forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist in a pike position. 20-year-old silver medalist at the South American Games. Colombian squad has been in really excellent form this past month. They were the dominant force at those South American Games. Let's have a look back at this performance that looks a lot stronger than qualification. 54. for Daniela Zapata, so she's up by almost 5 marks from the preliminary round. To Luana Lira of Brazil. Inward 2.5 somersaults tucked, 2.7 difficulty. We've just seen 2 dives of a 3.0 difficulty. She was the bronze medalist at the South American Games in Paraguay. This was her best dive in qualification. She's ever so experienced, is Luana Lira. Competed at the Olympic Games in Tokyo.
6, 6, 6, 6, 6.
Just a little out on the angle of entry into the water, causing a reasonable splash. 48.6 for her. So she's down by around 4 marks from qualification. Amy Wilson of Canada, the 22-year-old who won her first FINA medal in synchronized competition in her home country early this year. She starts with the inward 2.5 somersaults piked. Really is a fascinating individual, Amy Wilson. Student of anthropology at Texas A&M after her time at Louisiana State University. Little leg bend in the pike position, slightly over as she enters the water, but better than qualification. Quite a lot better, actually. 54 to the 48 that she scored in the preliminary rounds. That's a promising start. Her dive number 4 will be interesting. Samantha Pickens of the United States of America, inward 2.5 somersaults piked. This was her strongest dive in qualification. She's the reigning US Open champion. A lot about that worked quite nicely from Samantha Pickens. Probably the best we've seen so far.
7, 6.5, 7, 7.
Quite a good angle of entry. Nice tight pike position. Heels together, keeps them together, doesn't she, throughout the dive? That'll do well. 63 for Samantha Pickens. Indeed, the best we've seen. Some 7s for execution. Viviane Uribe, Colombian, who is the reigning South American Games champion. Forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist piked. Yes, that will do. Strong start from Viviane Uribe. Smooth looking dive, that.
6.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5. 7, 6.5.
Gets tidier as it goes on. The twist is tidier than the pike, certainly. Sometimes it can be the other way round for a lot of divers. 58.5 is her score, so she gains 3 marks from qualification. Jana-Lisa Rother of Germany, 24-year-old from Berlin. Lovely moment for her. She took synchronized silver earlier on in the World Cup. She opens with the inward 2.5 somersaults piked. This was her best dive in the preliminary round. Now she has started the competition smoothly and strongly, Jana-Lisa Rother. Comparable to qualification.
6.5.
Good tidy pike position, a little out on the angle of entry, but not a great deal. 57, that is exactly the same score as in the preliminary round for Jan-Lisa Rotter. We have 5 to go. Saskia Oetinghaus of Germany, synchronized silver medalist with Jan-Lisa Rotter. Inward 2.5 somersaults piked for her, same dive as her teammate from earlier in the World Cup. Has a bit of ground to make up on this. This wasn't her strongest in qualification, but it can be significantly better. Interesting, as she entered the water there, did throw up quite a lot of splash. 52.5 was the qualification score, might struggle to reach that. Indeed, the numbers coming in over the tannoy, suggestive of that. .43.5 for Saskia Oetinghaus, so she's down by 9 marks from the preliminary round. That's one of those aforementioned open doors. Brittany O'Brien from Australia, very good in qualification, 4th best. Inward 2.5 somersaults, piked to open. This is one of those dives that she might pick up marks on. She scored 45 in qualification. She was as high as 60, so a little uneven. She's a very fine diver, as demonstrated at the Commonwealth Games, where she took a 1 metre springboard silver medal. But she had some problems, didn't she, with the entry. So difficult to judge that right. She's just overcooked it coming out of the pike position. It is still better than qualification, 46.5 for Brittany O'Brien. But only by a mark and a half. To Mikami Sayaka of Japan, inward 2.5 somersaults piked for her first dive. 54 in qualification. She was as high as 71.4, as low as 36. Little topsy-turvy. Wonderful diver. Okay, then that's going to be an interesting comparison to make to the 54 from the preliminary round. Looked maybe a fraction better, but there will be some issues with the angle of entry. Very slight leg bend in the pike position. It's not a great deal, though. Otherwise, she's technically very sound. 61.5. So that is up by 7.5 marks. Chen Yuan of the People's Republic of China. Second strongest performer in qualification. Inward 2.5 somersaults piked. And you're looking at the reigning world champion. This was a very good opening in qualification. She's one of those people that, as we all know, steps it up when the final comes along. Oh, look at that angle of entry. In comparison to what we've seen so far, that really had a straightness to it, and it will do well as a result.
8, 8, 8, 7.5, 8, 7.5, 8.
That's that slightly unorthodox pike position. .72. Very strong start for her. Better than qualification by around 5 marks. Zhang Yanyi of the People's Republic of China, bronze medalist at the World Championships, top performer in qualification. We're going to see the same dive, inward 2.5 piked. And she had exactly the same score as Chen in qualifying. 67.5. And let's just remind ourselves, we've just seen a 72 from Chen. So, the bar raised. Again, she has a very good angle of entry into the water. A sense of control. It's going to be up there, isn't it? If she was a little close to the Springboard at first, but that was well done. 75 the score for Chang Yani. So she has also made gains from qualification, but a bigger one. It means at the end of the first round, the top qualifier remains the top performer going into the final proper. And Samantha Pickens of the United States of America has started to lead the breakaway pack, and that's very impressive from somebody who was the 8th best performer in qualification. Pickens' second dive is going to be crucial. We'll come back to that in just a moment, and I'll explain why. On the subject of important second dives, here's Kristen Hayden with the forward 3.5 somersaults piked. In qualification, 29.45. This was the one that caused her the most difficulty. It is her most difficult dive as well, 3.1. And it regrettably has done something similar here for her problematic entry into the water. It'll probably score better. There's a lot of rotating to put in, 3.5 somersaults. And it's 41.85 for Hayden. So that is a significant jump up of over 10 marks. Now to Daniela Zapata of Colombia. She scored 49.5 for this back 2.5 somersaults piked in qualification. Made her World Championship debut back in 2017. Just 20, and yet developing experience, growing as a performer. Little arched as she goes into the water, leading to a slap down off the feet. It's 51 though, it is better by just a fraction from qualification. Luana Lija of Brazil, back 2.5 somersaults piked. Started with a little drop from qualification. Let's see what she can do here. Part of that Brazilian team that won silver at the Military World Games in 2019 in China. She has a similar issue going into the water, but it might well be quite comparable to qualification. It's just a fraction lower, 45 for Luana Lija. 4.5 marks down. Amy Wilson of Canada. Now, she started with a strong effort, 54, well up from qualification. This is her most difficult dive. Forward 3.5 somersaults piked, 3.1. There was a lot about that worked quite nicely. Not a bad entry into the water, albeit with a reasonable amount of splash coming up. Looks quite secure. Also somewhat bent as she pikes around. Gets the heels in together for the entry. It's pretty consistent with qualification, 52.7. Just down by around 2 marks. Now to the third place athlete after the first round, Samantha Pickens of the United States of America. This is a really important dive. She scored 30 in qualification for this back 2.5 somersaults piked. Needs this one to keep in contention. And you know what? It's going to be an interesting competition. She's hugely experienced, is Samantha Pickens. And that is unrecognisable from what happened to her in qualification. It's a good, secure pike. It's a decent entry. And that's a 58.5 for a gain of 28.5 marks. Well done to her. Viviana Uribe of Colombia. Started with a 58.5. This was her weakest in qualification. Forward 3.5 somersaults piked. It's her most difficult dive. You could just feel the Colombians watching on, willing this one to go well. She's such a popular member of the team. She's so well respected. Great inspiration to her own younger brother. But this one will not be the sort of score she was looking for. It's a 37.2 for Viviana Uribe. Up by about a mark and a half in qualifying. Jana-Lisa Röther of Germany. Started with 57. Now to her second dive. Forward 2.5 somersaults, a 1 twist pike position. Must be such a lovely feeling competing in front of a true home crowd, not just your home country, but the city that you live in. She knows this venue so well. And she will know that this wasn't quite as was intended due to the entry. Throws up a lot of splash. 39.5 for her. Germans have had a good competition across the various medal events. But it's very unclear at the moment where we're heading with all three of these medals. Saskia Oettinghaus of Germany. Forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist piked. Most of her dives are 3.0s. And that went well, didn't it? Now, this was a 51 in qualification. She needs a pick up here, having struggled with the first dive. She might get back to almost level. This was transformed from the first effort. Good toe point, quite tidy, keeps the heels together as she motors round into the entry. Nicely performed, 60, good score for Saskia Oettinghaus. She's picked up a lot of what she lost in the first. Brittany O'Brien of Australia. Forward 3.5 somersaults tucked. Now, can she really get herself back on track after not picking up a huge amount from qualification in the first dive? This looked more secure. She's done so well in her career to learn to overcome mental blocks, especially after the pandemic when she really lost her routine during COVID. It's just a joy to have her back in competition. 54.6, that's exactly as she scored in qualification. So overall an aggregate gain across the first two. Mikami Sayaka of Japan, forward 3.5 somersaults piked. This was a dive that she performed extremely well in qualification. It was her second best, and this looked comparable.
7.5, 6.5, 6.5, 7, 6.5, 7.
It's a good entry. Doesn't get a huge amount of splash. 63.55. So she's down by a mark and a half from qualification to Chen Yuen. 23-year-old from Hainan Island, south of the mainland of China, its largest and most populous island. She lives 600 kilometers to the northeast in Guangdong for training purposes. Back 2.5 somersaults piked. A very smooth looking entry into the water from Chen Yuen. The crowd very much appreciated that.
8.5, 8.5, 8.5, 9, 8, 9.
So do the judges, 76.5 for her. Now that's a gain of 15 marks from qualification. So she really is on song in this final. Zhang Yanyi. This was the dive where she had a little issue in the preliminary round. Scored 54, back 2.5 somersaults piked. As I said at the start, everybody potentially left the door open for somebody in qualification. This might be that very dive for Zhang Yanyi. Let's see how that 54 translates to this final. Well, that's the end of that then. Yes, that was better. That really was better from Zhang Yanyi. That was a transformed effort. That didn't look even slightly like the dive that gave her some difficulties in the preliminary round. Very fine technique. 75 the score for Zhang Yanyi. Gain of 21 marks from qualification. So all of this means that we have a very narrow advantage of 1.5 marks for Zhang Yanyi at the top of the leaderboard. Mikami Sayaka has moved into 3rd position. Samantha Pickens drops down to 4th place despite a big improvement with her 2nd dive. So we go back round for the 3rd of 5 dives from all of these competitors. Congratulations to all 12 of them making it into this final. Here's Kristen Hayden, who won that synchronized bronze medal with Brooke Schultz. 24-year-old, the first black American diver to qualify for the World Championships. She has just performed her back 2.5 somersaults pike. And she's spoken about how she wants to be such a good role model for young black Americans. She's a founding member of USA Diving's Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Council.
6, 6.5, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6.
Her score is 54. Kristen Hayden improves upon her performance in qualification by almost 5 marks. Now to Daniela Zapata of Colombia. She's up overall from qualification. Reverse 2.5 somersaults piked. Now that's very interesting. This was a 30 in the preliminary round, and it certainly didn't look like that in the preliminary round. Not at all. Way better. First time that she's competed at a World Cup event. Middle leg bend, but her toe point is very good, and her entry had a smoothness that has resulted in a score of 55.5. Best dive so far for Zapata. Luana Lija of Brazil, reverse 2.5 somersaults piked. 45 for this in qualification. Room to manoeuvre, perhaps. She may have done that there. Perhaps getting into her rhythm in this final. Best dive, no question.
6, 6.5, 6.5, 7, 6, 7.
controlled in the takeoff, decent amplitude, good pike. Pretty tidy entry overall.
Amy Wilson.
It's 58.5 for Liha. By some way her best mark, 9.5 up from the previous best. Amy Wilson of Canada, back 2.5 somersaults piked. As I'm sure many of you know, until the age of 13, she was a highly accomplished Scottish country dancer before choosing to focus on diving, which she did in tandem with her dancing for a long time. She's enjoying so much more her diving now at Texas A&M. Score is 49.5. Down by 4.5 in qualification. In contention, Samantha Pickens of the United States of America, 4th after the last round, 3rd after the first round. Forward 3.5 somersaults pike coming up from her. This was her second best dive in qualification. She's finishing with her favoured dive. Seemed a little bent at the midsection as she entered the water. The veteran from Pittsburgh, but based in Midland in Texas.
4.5, 4, 4.
Could see her drop down further. Doesn't quite open up out of the pike. .38.75. Down by getting on for 20 marks, actually. Viviana Uribe of Colombia. Inward 2.5 somersaults tucked. This was a 48.6 in qualification. She looked slightly off axis as she entered the water. Just a slightly obtuse angle.
6.5, 6. 6.5, 6. 6, 6, 6.
48.6 for her. Must be exhausted after the fantastic South American Games she had, where she took 3 gold medals. Jan-Lisa Rother of Germany. This is her reverse 2.5 somersaults piked coming up. It was her second weakest dive in qualification. And it's going to be a similar situation for her here, if not the weakest, regrettably. Never looked in control of the entry. It'll be quite a way down from that qualification score. And indeed, we've got some 3.5s looking like they're going to be the key numbers here. .31.5 for Jan-Lisa Rother, down by 15 from qualification. Saskia Oertinghaus of Germany. 3-meter synchronized silver medalist with Rother. Forward 3.5 somersaults piked. Most difficult dive for her coming up. It was her top scorer in qualification. She's had a very big development of late as a diver. Second time she's competed at a World Cup competition. First time she's got on the podium. This one not as secure as it has been. .48.05 from a 54.25 in the preliminary round. It's very open at the moment in terms of the top 5. outside of those leading two. Brittany O'Brien from Australia, back 2.5 somersaults pike. This was her weakest dive in qualification, 42. Now then, this will be interesting to see how the Olympian from Rio scores for this one. It looked a lot better. Tidier coming into the water, better in the air. All around, that was a step up. Very well done to Brittany O'Brien for that. 57 compared to the 15-mark lower score she received in the preliminary round. Talked about how she's overcome those mental blocks in her career. That's an example of it. Mikami Sayaka of Japan, reverse 2.5 somersaults piked. This is a vital dive. She scored 36 for this in qualification. Well, that was certainly on the tidier side. But how much more? This could be really important from a medal perspective for everyone else trying to chase her. It wasn't as tidy probably as what we've seen so far from her. It was better and probably better enough. 51, so up by 15 marks from qualifying. Chen Yuen with a reverse 2.5 somersaults piked. This was her strongest dive in qualification, but she's already gone up quite a bit. 1.5 marks between them. Two leaders so far. So that is a very elegant reverse 2.5 somersaults piked. She won the 3-meter double last year at the Tokyo World Cup. Chen Yuen.
7.5, 8, 7.5, 7.5, 7.5, 8, 8.
.69 for her. Not the strongest, but still one of the best dives we've seen. Zhang Yani, now with her reverse 2.5 somersaults piked. Good opportunity for her here to increase that 1.5 margin. What a nice entry in her reverse 2.5 somersaults piked. Zhang Yani of the People's Republic of China, leading this competition and likely to really enhance her credentials. This is the first big separation between the two of them. It was a way better dive. The feet were glued together. Lovely toe point, ballet dancer's toe point. That's very nice. It's a very nice score too, 76.5. So the gap is going to grow. Things have changed numerically. Zhang Yani over Chen Yuen. Mikami Sayaka remains in third place, and Daniela Zapata of Colombia is the big mover now up into fourth position in what is really a quite close competition for those trying to get towards Mikami, who's making it very difficult for her to be caught. There's a 16-point gap or thereabouts between Mikami and Zapata. Kristen Hayden of the United States of America now with her penultimate dive. This was what she scored 36 for in qualification, reverse 2.5 somersaults piked. And she comes away from this weekend of competition having achieved a real milestone, which is to get her first World Cup honours, winning that bronze medal in the synchronised event with Brooke Schultz.
6. Daniela Zapata
49.5. So a gain of 13.5 marks from qualification to the diver in 4th position after the last round. Daniela Zapata of Colombia, forward 3.5 somersaults tucked. She's doing everything she can to just keep in contention in case things go problematically for the top 3, particularly for Japan's Mikami Sayaka.
Six and a half, 6.
50.4. So she has gained just over 5 marks from qualification. Here's Luana Lija of Brazil. This is her most difficult dive, forward 3.5 somersaults piked. It was a little wayward in qualification, 37.2. Let's hope that this is a more controlled display from the Olympian from Tokyo. Oh, maybe so. Luana Lija of Brazil. Look better.
5 and a half, 5 and a half, 5 and a half, 5 and a half, 5.
It's a better pike, it's a better entry. 49.6 for the Brazilian. So she gains over 12 marks from qualification. Canada's Amy Wilson. Reverse 2.5 somersaults piked. This did not go so well in qualification, 16.5. Well, it's a transformed display here. Very different looking dive from Amy Wilson, and well done to her. She'll be way, way up. Still has some issues with the form in flight. 49.5. That is well over 30 marks up. 5th place, after having been in the bronze medal position at the end of the first round, Samantha Pickens of the United States of America. Reverse 2.5 somersaults piked coming up from her. This was her second weakest in qualification. 40.5 was the score. Let's see how she's done here in terms of going beyond that 40.5 mark. One imagines it might be a little lower. Entry didn't look very comfortable. $34.5 for Samantha Pickens. Viviana Uribe of Colombia. Back 2.5 somersaults piked. She comes down quite aggressively on the water. This was her second strongest in qualification, a score of 54. It will come up well shy of that.
4.5, 4.5, 4.5.
She won the national games recently. The score on this occasion, 40.5. Annalisa Rota of Germany had a tricky last dive. What can she do with this back 2.5 somersaults piked? This was the problematic section of her qualification, this dive and the one before. This was her lowest in qualifying, 42. Wasn't a fully straight entry into the water, quite arched in the back. Must congratulate her on recently acquiring her admittance to the degree of Master of Science in Psychology after she graduated with a distinction at the Humboldt University of Berlin a couple of years ago. Her score here is not quite as distinct, 36 for Annalisa Rother. Her teammate Saskia Oettinghaus. Reverse 2.5 somersaults piked coming up from her. This was a 51 in qualification. 9th coming into this round as the 5th strongest in qualification. Not been the easiest of competitions for Saskia Oettinghaus. Nonetheless, she will depart this weekend with her first ever World Cup medals.
5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.
The entry was not hugely well controlled. .46.5 for Saskia Oettinghaus.
Brittany O'Brien, 2,5 Oberseite gehechtet, reverse, 2.5.
So in 6th position at the moment. Now to Brittany O'Brien of Australia. Reverse 2.5 somersaults piked. This was her best dive in the preliminary round, performed it really nicely. And she's performed it nicely again. Not that long ago that she was convinced to go from platform to springboard competition. It's really reinvigorated her career. Graduate of Macquarie University.
6.5, 7, 6.5.
.58.5 for O'Brien, down by a mark and a half from qualification. Very comparable display. Mikami Sayaka was about 16 points clear in bronze coming into this round. Back 2.5 somersaults pike coming up from her. She's got a very difficult dive, the most difficult we're going to see coming up next. And this is a good finish to her competition, really looking strong. One more to go with a good margin of difficulty over the rest of the pack. Has had a sense of smoothness in her entry to the water. Her score is 60. So she's gained 4.5 marks from qualification. Tighter grip on bronze. Chen Yuwen from China. Forward 3.5 somersaults piked. They have exactly the same program in exactly the same order, the two top qualifiers. Struggled with this in qualification. Not as strong as we've seen from her, but probably better than the preliminary round. Certainly be her weakest dive in terms of the entry.
6.5, 7, 5.5, 7.
Reigning world champion, not fully secure there. 60.45. So Another great chance for Zhang Yanyi to take control. Same dive, forward 3.5 somersaults piked. Well, she's been up on 2 of the 3 dives so far compared to Chen. One imagined it's going to be quite comfortably up on this 4th and penultimate one. Again, for her, it's not her best. Her entry wasn't as strong as others. Secure. 69.75 for Zhang Yanyi. Good gap now of around 20 at the top of the leaderboard. Zhang Yanyi over Chen Yuen. Mikami Sayaka looking very comfortable by close to 20 marks in the bronze medal position as well, with the Brittany O'Brien as easy to see from that last dive, moving up into 4th place. Going to get a very interesting finish to the competition with O'Brien and Mikami, because Mikami's got that really difficult dive to come. It's a risky dive. It worked in qualification. The last dive for Kristen Hayden of the United States of America, inward 2.5 somersaults piked. She scored 54 for this in the preliminary round. And the 24-year-old has just completed her women's 3-meter springboard final, and she's done very well to play her part in it. She won her first individual national medal last year. It's a 48 for Kristen Hayden. Daniela Zapata of Colombia. Inward 2.5 somersaults piked. This was her best dive in the preliminary round. She scored 52.5. Was in 5th place at the end of the last round. And that's very impressive considering that she's the 11th strongest qualifier. She's had a really good final, has Daniela Zapata. Every single dive so far has been a step up from qualification. What about here with what was her best dive in the preliminary round? Yeah, slightly tougher challenge. But it's what you want to see from an athlete, just to get progressively better. This time she is down, as one suspected she might be, 49.5. But overall, she's gained a lot from qualification. She scored 226.3 in qualifying, 260.4 in the final. Luana Liha of Brazil, forward 2.5 somersaults, piked position with a twist as well. This was her second lowest scoring dive. It's a very busy dive for that 3.0 difficulty. A good lock on the heels for the lion's share of that. And it's 54 for Liha. That's 12 marks better than the preliminary round. Amy Wilson from Canada.
Amy Wilson.
Forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist, height dive.
2.5 somersaults, 1 twist.
This was her best dive in qualification. It was nicely executed. And didn't she enter the water well there, Amy Wilson? Had that lovely moment when she won her first FINA medal in Canada, teaming with Pamela Ware, her absolute idol. Comes from a gymnastics background. Her mother was a gymnast and is now a brevet judge. It's just great to see Amy Wilson enjoying competing again, and she finishes wonderfully with a 61.5. That's handsomely her best score in this final. Well done to the 22-year-old. She's training to be a first grade teacher, a school teacher. Now, favoured dive here for Samantha Pickens of the United States of America. Forward 2.5 somersaults at 1 twist, piked. Same as we've just seen from Wilson and Leha. And it is easy to see why it is a favoured dive for her. Well, fast forward from the Tokyo World Cup, a different experience for the American here. She had a difficult time in Tokyo at the World Cup when her father was in hospital watching from his bed. Of course, he was never going to miss it, so much does he love to support his daughter's career. And she scores 55.5. And that is her second best score, and it's up from qualification. Viviana Uribe of Colombia. Reverse 2.5 somersaults, piked, 3.0 difficulty. 'Touch compressed as she entered the water. The score was 49.5 in qualification. .5 on this occasion, so Uribe finds herself in 9th position. Annalisa Rother of Germany. Final dive for her. Forward 3.5 somersaults in the pike position. She's lived in New York, she's lived in Paris, half of her family is based in Madrid. She's truly an individual with a home all over the world. And, she's been at home at this World Cup event doing so well to get a synchronised silver medal. It's not been as secure a final from her today, but you know what? She still departs with something that she had never accomplished before. See more of her later in the team event as well. .52.7 for Annalisa Rother, has her in 9th position at the moment. She was 12th coming into this, so she has improved. Now Saskia Oettinghaus. Back 2.5 somersaults piked coming up from her. I've seen a few of these so far in the earlier rounds. Now, she was in 8th position coming into this final round. At the moment, Amy Wilson is the diver in 3rd place behind the 2 Chinese competitors who are still yet to perform their dives. Where does Ertinghaus feature after this display? .52.5. She goes into 6th position. Brittany O'Brien from Australia in 4th place, and looking to exploit any issues that Mikami Sayaka has with a strong display of her own. This is her forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist piked. Scored 58.5 in qualification. Well done, Brittany O'Brien, for this final. Well done for everything that you've accomplished this year. Well done for displaying the kind of mental fortitude that most people can only dream of. What a great transition she's made into springboard competition. Not her smoothest entry, that one. Score of 51. She has gone above Amy Wilson, so the one next to O'Brien's name indicative that of all the divers that have gone so far, she is leading. Mikami Sayaka of Japan. Forward 2.5 somersaults, 2 twists in the pike position coming up from her. This is difficult, 3.4. It's the most difficult dive we're going to see in this final, and it scored her 71.4 in qualification. It's a gamble. And it is quite over this time. Now, this is intriguing, actually. She's got a decent margin to go ahead of Brittany O'Brien. She might be using quite a bit of that margin, actually. Comes down hard on the water. It is enough by under 10 marks, 51 for Mikami, and as a result, she's guaranteed a medal. She moves ahead of Chen Yuen. Just about got there, just about got there. Had to use up some of that insurance policy. Chen Yuen from the People's Republic of China. Forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist piked, 3.0 difficulty. Well, neither of them delivered their finest work in the last round, but this from Chen Yuen was more typical, and it now asks questions of Chang Yani. Good dive from the reigning world champion and the World Cup winner. Better by a long way than the last round, and up by 1.5 marks from qualification. But you would have to feel now things are really in the hands of the diver who is coming up next. So, Chang Yani, forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist piked. She's 50.7 behind, and she scored 66. in qualification. By her standards, eminently achievable. And it looks to have been achieved as well by Chang Yani from Shantou in landlocked Hubei province in the east of China. She concludes her campaign and waits for the score to come in with, one suspects, a fair amount of confidence. It's a mechanically nicely administered dive. And it is enough to take the win. It is her weakest scoring dive, but she had plenty of margin for error. The score 67.5 for a total of 363.75, and well ahead of Chen Yuen in the end.
Winner, representing the People's Republic of China, Chang Yani.
Really, it was the strength of the first three dives for Chang Yani more than anything else that got the job done. Mikami Sayaka was stronger in the first couple of rounds. We'll have a look back at how the competition was won by Chang Yani.
Place third, representing Japan, Sayaka Mikami, at a score of 287.05.
And it ended up being a reasonably close contest for third place as well, with Brittany O'Brien and Amy Wilson virtually on the same score, around 20 marks behind Mikami Sayaka, who made it interesting when she had a few difficulties with that very difficult final dive. Classified results in the women's 3-meter springboard competition at the World Cup in Berlin. Mikami Sayaka of Japan takes the bronze. Chen Yuen of China wins the silver medal, and her teammate Chang Yani takes the title. We have lots more diving to bring you in around 25 minutes' time. It will be the last individual men's final, the 10-meter platform competition, before we move on to the team event to conclude our coverage of this World Cup weekend. So don't go too far away. We'll be back in around 25 minutes.
An Teamarbeit und Freude an ihrer Kreativität. Dies ist die Geschichte, wie wir dem Wasser eine neue, frische Form geben, indem wir es zu einem funkelnden Meisterwerk gestalten. Hier sprühen Ideen auf, geprägt von unserer italienischen Sensibilität, einem Gespür für zeitlose Schönheit.